Discipline hurts. Regret hurts more. The first cut always hurts more because it threatens the very identity you've built to survive. Not thrive, survive. When you decide to change, you are not just shifting actions, you're dismantling an entire internal structure built around comfort, avoidance, and self-preservation. That's why the first moment you wake up earlier, or say no to a craving, or force yourself into the quiet agony of effort, you feel like you're dying a little inside. And in a way you are. A part of you is dying, the weaker part. The voice that convinced you mediocrity was safety, the part that made peace with staying the same. The human mind clings to patterns like a child clings to its blanket in the dark. It doesn't care whether those patterns are killing your potential, it just wants familiarity. And discipline is unfamiliar. It's violent in its clarity. It says, you are not fine the way you are. You are not safe doing nothing. You are not entitled to results you haven't bled for. Most people cannot handle this message, so they reject discipline, not because it's too hard, but because it exposes them. It rips the mask off. It shows them their excuses were never reasons, their failures were never fate, just the result of 1,000 daily surrenders. And that's why the first cut hurts more, because it's not just muscle that gets torn when you act with discipline, it's illusion. The illusion that effort could be postponed, that change could come without pain, that you could somehow escape the consequences of avoiding your own growth. When you choose to act with discipline, you insult the ego that told you to stay still. You betray the lazy voice that kept you docile, and it punishes you with doubt, fatigue, rationalizations. It says, this isn't you, this is too much. What's the point? And that moment right there, that's the battlefield. If you turn back, you've confirmed its power. If you keep going, you've taken it from it. But make no mistake, the first act of discipline will feel like punishment. That's normal, because pain is the cost of re-entry into your own potential. You've been out of touch with who you could be. The price of that return is discomfort, sweat, silence, emotional friction, the friction between who you are and who you say you want to become. No one talks about that tension. They tell you to start small, go easy, stay consistent. But what they don't tell you is that the moment you act against your old identity, your nervous system panics, your body resists, your mind scrambles to regain the upper hand. You will feel like you're attacking yourself. Because in a way you're attacking the version of you that's settled. That pain isn't punishment, it's confirmation. You are no longer aligned with the same weak system you once protected. Every drop of effort is you bleeding out the comfort addiction. And of course it will sting, but only the first time. That's the hidden truth. The first rep hurts more than the 10th. The first boundary burns hotter than the next. The first rejection of a craving feels like loss. Later it feels like freedom, because your threshold grows. You expand into the pain, and what once overwhelmed you becomes a new baseline. That's what discipline does. It stretches your edge until it becomes your floor, and yet people quit too early. They mistake the first cut for a sign they're broken, that they're not built for effort, that they're too weak, too tired, too far gone. But the pain is not proof of weakness. It's proof that you've stopped pretending. The ache in your chest when you push beyond comfort isn't failure. It's resurrection. That sting in your legs when you take one more step isn't suffering. It's rebirth. You're shedding layers you never needed. And yes, it hurts. It's supposed to. The first cut wakes you up. It tells you you've been asleep in your own life, living soft, numbing truth, avoiding the mirror. Discipline shatters that sleep. And when you wake, everything feels raw, loud, difficult, but real. That realness is your compass. Pain is not the enemy. It's the map. It points directly to what you've been avoiding. And if you're brave enough to follow it, you'll find your strength hiding right behind it. So no, the first cut won't feel good, but it will feel right. It won't reward you immediately, but it will change you permanently. And what feels unbearable today will become your armor tomorrow. And that armor will carry you through storms that once would have broken you, not because pain disappeared, but because you stopped running from it. The trap of the painless path. There is a subtle kind of suffering that masquerades as peace. It's not loud, it doesn't scream like failure, it doesn't sting like heartbreak. It's quiet, soft, almost soothing. That's why it's so dangerous. It's the suffering of the painless life, the slow decay of a soul that never learns to stretch. The world offers you this path at every corner. Skip the workout, delay the project, numb the anxiety with noise, swipe, scroll, order, escape. 1,000 comforts for a mind too afraid to confront itself. And for a while it works. You smile, you coast, you stay afloat. But something deeper begins to rot. Not your body, not even your results. Your will. Ease corrodes the will. You don't notice it at first. You just stop doing hard things. Then you stop thinking hard thoughts. Then you stop facing hard truths. Before you realize it, you're not just avoiding discomfort. You're avoiding reality. The painless path sells itself as a life hack, but it's a soul trap. It asks nothing of you and slowly takes everything. Your sharpness, your edge, your urgency. It replaces fire with fog, and you begin to forget what clarity ever felt like. Discipline is painful. But the painless life is paralyzing. It keeps you just comfortable enough to avoid change, but just anxious enough to crave something more. You live in limbo. You talk about potential, but live in hesitation. You dream of transformation, but die in repetition. You become someone who knows exactly what to do, but never does it. Because the painless path doesn't steal your goals. It steals the friction that would have birthed them. Pain is the currency of growth. When you remove pain from your life, you're not becoming free, you're becoming fragile. That's the lie of ease. That's the great betrayal, because it feels like protection until it's too late. Until you wake up one morning and realize nothing is wrong, but everything is off. You've lost your taste for challenge. You avoid silence. You distract instead of decide. And the longer you walk the painless path, the harder it is to return to yourself. You lose muscle in the soul. The ability to choose discomfort dies in people who haven't used it. And by the time regret arrives, it's already too heavy to move. People think regret comes from one big mistake. It rarely does. Regret is the accumulation of softness. It's 1,000 small surrenders. It's the weight of potential abandoned in favor of peace. But it wasn't peace. It was sedation. True peace comes from earning your pride, from bleeding on the battlefield of effort and knowing you didn't run. What the painless life offers is not peace, it's delay. And delay is the deadliest drug. It calms your urgency, soothes your fear, and erases the sharp edge of your hunger. But time keeps moving. And while you float in comfort, the life you wanted gets farther and farther away. The painless life is a spiritual erosion. You don't see it, you don't feel it, until you wake up hollow. And when that hollowness sets in, nothing external will fill it. Not money, not validation, not distraction. Because deep down your soul remembers the path you didn't take, the one that required more from you, the one that would have hurt, but also healed. And when you look back, what stings isn't just the missed opportunity. It's knowing you avoided the pain that would have shaped you. There's a voice inside you that whispers in the quiet. It doesn't beg. It doesn't shout. It simply asks, when will you stop avoiding the weight you were born to carry? That question doesn't leave. It lingers, waits, grows. Because you can't unknow your own strength once you've glimpsed it. And you've glimpsed it. That's why you're here. That's why this message finds you now. Not to shame you, but to shake you. The painless path is comfortable, yes, but comfort is not the same as contentment. One is numbness, the other is earned. And if you keep choosing comfort to avoid the cuts of growth, you will never know the weightlessness that comes from living with nothing to regret. The truth is this: life will not wait for you to get ready, and your potential does not respect your avoidance. You are not meant to feel good all the time. You are meant to feel real, and that means choosing pain that leads to peace over peace that leads to pain. That means walking away from the lie of ease and into the storm of effort, because that storm cleanses, that storm builds, and beyond it, there is something no painless life can offer: pride, clarity, and the quiet strength of a life you didn't run from. The enemy wears your face. The greatest battle you will ever fight will not be against the world. It will be against yourself. The enemy isn't the person who doubts you, criticizes you, or stands in your way. The enemy is the voice that lives inside you, the one that whispers when no one's around, convincing you to stay small, to wait, to fold. It sounds familiar because it is. It uses your tone, your fears, your memories. It pretends to protect you, but it only imprisons you. You don't need an outside force to ruin your progress when your own mind does it so elegantly. Every time you choose comfort over challenge, that enemy wins. Every time you justify a delay, make an excuse, or surrender to distraction, you feed it. You build your own cage and call it safety. This enemy is cunning. It wears your face and speaks in reason. It tells you that today isn't the right day, that you'll try again tomorrow, that one missed day won't matter. And yet, every time you listen, a small part of your willpower dies. You don't feel it immediately. The decay is slow, almost invisible. But days become habits, and habits become identity. Before long, you don't need the voice to hold you back. You do it automatically. You build routines of avoidance, patterns of retreat, cycles of surrender. You disguise them as balance, self-care, patience. You lie to yourself with words that sound noble. And the tragedy is that the enemy inside you claps every time you do. The Stoics understood this war. They spoke of conquering the self as the highest victory, because once you master your inner world, nothing external can break you. But when your own mind turns traitor, every obstacle multiplies. You begin to see enemies everywhere, when in truth you're only meeting mirrors. People who trigger you, situations that frustrate you, they are not the problem. They are reflections of the parts of you still ruled by fear and comfort. Every reaction you can't control exposes an inner weakness you've refused to face. Discipline is how you reclaim that territory. It's how you declare war on the part of you that wants an easy life. The hardest truth to accept is that your suffering is often self-inflicted. You are both the jailer and the prisoner. You set the limits and then curse the walls. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you. It just needs to keep you negotiating, to make you question your own strength, to make you think that comfort is healing, when it's actually decay. You talk yourself out of effort, convince yourself that struggle means something's wrong. But discipline is not punishment. It's rebellion. It's how you overthrow the empire of your own excuses. Each disciplined act is a coup against the part of you that would rather sleep through life. You must learn to separate the two voices inside you, the one that seeks ease and the one that seeks evolution. The first will comfort you into regret. The second will challenge you into freedom, and you'll know the difference by how they feel. The first one soothes your fear. The second one demands your strength. Every time you silence the inner saboteur and act with discipline, you realign your life with truth. The truth that your potential isn't waiting to be found, it's waiting to be earned, and no one else can fight that fight for you. There will be days when the enemy feels stronger, when it tells you that the effort isn't worth it, when it dresses up in logic and says you've done enough. That's when you must remember, comfort has never once built character. Ease has never once revealed power. You cannot reason with weakness. You can only starve it. You starve it with action, with repetition, with the quiet pride that comes from keeping a promise to yourself that no one else sees. Every time you do that, the enemy loses its grip. This war never ends completely, but it becomes quieter. The voice weakens, the resistance fades, because each disciplined act replaces the old identity with a new one, forged in proof, not hope. And soon, you won't need to fight as much, because the new self won't need convincing. It will act out of clarity, not struggle. Out of choice, not fear. And that's when you realize what Seneca meant when he said that no man is free unless he masters himself. Freedom isn't the absence of restraint. It's the absence of inner betrayal. And the moment you stop being your own enemy, the world can no longer defeat you. Time is the debt collector. Time doesn't chase you. It doesn't shout. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It just moves, quietly, relentlessly. And every choice you make, or refuse to make, becomes a line in the ledger. People treat time like it's a renewable resource, as if tomorrow is promised, or that another version of themselves will magically appear in the future to fix what they're avoiding now. But that version never shows up, because if you don't suffer in the present for your growth, you will suffer in the future for your regret. That's how time collects, not in days, inconsequences. You might think you're getting away with it, sleeping in, skipping the effort, postponing the hard decisions. You might even tell yourself you deserve rest, that you've been through a lot, that you'll get serious when things settle down. But time doesn't care about your reasons. It only responds to reality. It only adds. Delayed effort adds fatigue. Postponed discipline adds chaos. Avoided pain adds regret. Time never forgets your debt. It waits. Then it returns with interest. The longer you avoid discipline, the higher the price becomes. At first, it's just discomfort. Then it becomes dissatisfaction. Then it becomes depression, the slow suffocation of knowing you are capable of more and watching yourself waste it. That's the tax regret charges, not just emotional pain, but identity erosion. You stop seeing yourself as someone who changes. You start believing that this is just how life is, that fate has written your limitations, when in reality, it was just time responding to your choices or your lack of them. Time rewards those who bleed early, who pay the price when it's low, who sacrifice now to build strength later. It punishes those who wait for certainty, those who want growth without discomfort, those who think they can bargain with delay. But there's no negotiation. Time is neutral. It will either be your executioner or your witness. And you get to decide which. Most people live in what they think is the present, but it's really a prison built from past avoidance. Their current struggles are echoes of old neglect. They didn't prepare. They didn't act. They didn't choose the pain when it was light. So now it's heavy. Now it has weight. Now it drags behind them like chains. And they wonder why everything feels so hard, why there's never enough energy, motivation, momentum. But energy doesn't come from waiting. It comes from action. From deciding that the price of today is always less than the regret of tomorrow. There's a false comfort in thinking you'll change later, that when the timing is right, you'll finally become disciplined. But time doesn't wait for readiness, and momentum doesn't appear out of hope. It appears out of motion. You have to move now, while the pain is still within your control, before time decides for you what you'll lose, because one day the window will close, and what was once procrastination will become identity. Not "I'm putting this off," but "I'm not the kind of person who changes." And that shift, from delay to defeat, is the most expensive cost of all. Discipline, when chosen now, is cheap compared to what time will demand later. Every small act of discomfort today is a payment toward your future self. Every workout, every silent moment of focus, every early morning, every temptation resisted. These are not sacrifices, they're investments. They're proof that you're not just drifting, that you're not a passenger in your own life, that you've understood the rules of the game. And the first rule is this: time will collect. So choose how you pay. There is no freedom without cost, no mastery without debt, but you get to decide when to suffer and what for. That's the power people give away. They wait until they're in pain and then try to escape. But the Stoic chooses the pain now, so he never has to beg later. He doesn't ask for life to be easier. He asks to be stronger before it gets harder, because he knows the debt is coming, and he would rather meet it standing tall than running. Time is not cruel. It is just. It gives every one of us the same truth. You cannot store it, save it, or stretch it, but you can spend it in a way that future you doesn't have to apologize for. The question is not whether time will pass. The question is what you'll have to show for it when it does. The weight of the unchosen life. There's a silence heavier than noise, and it comes from a life you were meant to live, but didn't. Not because tragedy stole it, but because you never reached for it. You postponed it into oblivion. You talked about it, you dreamed it, but you didn't step into the fire that would have made it real. That fire is discipline, and without it, the version of you that was possible becomes a ghost. One that never screams but always lingers. You can feel it sometimes, in the quiet moments before the distraction kicks in. That pull, that ache, that question you don't want to answer. The version of you that's stronger, wiser, sharper. It doesn't hate you. It just waits. But every day you choose ease over effort, silence over decision, comfort over action. It moves one step further into the dark. And one day you wake up and realize you don't just feel tired. You feel haunted by the weight of what could have been. Regret isn't just about missed chances. It's about identity theft, a slow robbery of everything you once believed you could become. Not because it wasn't possible, but because it wasn't chosen. People think the cost of inaction is neutral. That standing still is safe. But nothing in life stays still. You either evolve or decay. You either move toward your power or drift into resentment. And drifting always feels easier until you realize where it leads. The unchosen life doesn't die in one moment. It dies gradually. The first time you lie to yourself about why you didn't start. The first time you abandon a habit you knew mattered. The first time you rationalize your way out of growth. These are small funerals. Moments where a future version of you is quietly buried. No tears, no ceremony, just silence. And you keep walking. But lighter. Not because you're free, but because you're carrying less of your potential with you. What makes it worse is how normal this feels. Everyone around you is doing the same, avoiding, distracting, delaying. So you don't question it. You call it balance. You call it realism. But deep down, something inside you knows the truth. That life isn't asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to be willing. Willing to face the discomfort. Willing to fall and try again. Willing to stop waiting for permission. The life you want isn't hiding. It's just not available at the price you're currently paying. You were built for more. Not because you're special, but because you're unfinished. Discipline is how you finish the work. How you build the bridge between who you are and who you could be. Without it, you're left staring across the gap, wondering why life feels incomplete. It's incomplete because you haven't committed, and commitment always hurts before it heals. That's why so few make it across. They see the fire, feel the heat, and turn back to comfort, not realizing that the comfort will become their cage. Eventually, you won't remember the pain of the things you tried. You'll remember the silence of the things you didn't. The path not taken becomes heavier than any weight you could have lifted, and it follows you. In conversations, in decisions, in the mirror. Until the reflection staring back at you no longer feels like yours. It feels like a stranger, one who speaks in the language of if only. But it's not too late. That's the mercy hidden inside all this pain. You can still change the weight you carry. You can still choose to chase the life that aches inside you. It won't come without pain, but it will come with meaning. And meaning is the only thing that makes pain noble. It transforms effort into purpose, struggle into structure, wounds into wisdom. That's the life you were meant to live. Not easy, but earned. Not perfect, but real. The weight of the unchosen life doesn't disappear. But when you begin to walk the path of discipline, it shifts. It becomes fuel. You remember what you could have been, and you let that memory sharpen you, push you, remind you why you won't turn back this time, because now you know what's at stake. And now you understand regret isn't the pain of failure. It's the pain of never stepping into the fire, building the pain threshold. Pain has always been part of you. The problem is that no one taught you what it meant. You were taught to avoid it, silence it, resent it. But pain is not the enemy. Pain is the forge, and if you resist it, you remain soft. If you embrace it, you begin to transform. Discipline hurts not because you're broken, but because you're stepping beyond what you were trained to endure. You are stretching a nervous system conditioned by ease, and that stretch burns. But that burn is necessary, because without it you never upgrade your limits, you just live inside them. The first instinct when discomfort shows up is escape. Delay the decision, postpone the effort, drown the resistance with distractions. But all that does is shrink your capacity. The more you avoid pain, the more fragile you become. And fragility is the fastest path to regret, because life doesn't care about your tolerance. It throws storms at everyone. The only difference is who's built to hold their ground. That's what the pain threshold is. It's the strength to carry what others drop. The mental callus that forms when you show up, not once, but every day, especially when it hurts. You don't rise by avoiding what's heavy. You rise by lifting it until it's no longer heavy. That's how the threshold is built. Not through motivation or inspiration, through contact, through repetition, through choosing again and again to do what your past self would have skipped. And at first, The body screams. The mind argues. The weakness you've fed for years demands a voice. But that voice grows quieter the more you ignore it. Not through force, through proof. Every act of discipline is proof. Proof that pain doesn't kill you, that it can be endured, transcended, replaced by something stronger. The discomfort that once broke you becomes familiar, then tolerable, then fuel. It's not that the pain disappears, it's that you evolve past it. You grow into a version of yourself who sees pain not as a stop sign but as a signal, a message that you've entered the zone where growth actually happens. Most people never reach that zone. They retreat the moment it stings. They think pain means something's wrong, but pain, when chosen, is the body adapting. It's the spirit shedding layers. It's the mind reconfiguring its limits. That's why the Stoics trained themselves through voluntary hardship, not to suffer for its own sake, but to become unbreakable, to expand the threshold so that when life turned brutal, and it always does, they would not collapse. They would already be familiar with the weight. If you want more from life, you must give more of yourself to effort. There's no shortcut, no gentle path. Only the decision to suffer on purpose so you don't suffer by surprise. You choose your discipline, or life chooses your regret. And the difference is made in your relationship to pain. If you run from it, it will hunt you. If you face it, it will sharpen you. This isn't about glorifying struggle, it's about respecting it. Seeing pain not as an obstacle, but as a sculptor. Every time you resist temptation, you carve away a weakness. Every time you push through exhaustion, you discover a layer of will you didn't know existed. And slowly, almost without noticing, you become someone else. Not because you said affirmations or made a vision board, but because you changed what you could tolerate. You raised the ceiling of your discomfort, and with it, your life expanded. Discipline teaches you to carry more, to endure more, to need less. It rewires the nervous system, not just to survive stress, but to perform under it. The person who trains under resistance walks lighter, fears less, waits for no one, because their strength is not a performance. It's built into their bones, earned, not gifted. If it hurts right now, good. That means you're changing. That means the threshold is rising. That means tomorrow's pain will cost you less, and eventually you'll look back at what used to break you and smile. Not because it stopped hurting, but because you became someone it could no longer touch. The forging hour. There is a sacred hour most people never see. A moment when the world is still asleep, and all the noise of distraction hasn't yet begun. This is not just a time on the clock. It's a battlefield. The place where one version of you dies, and another is reborn. The forging hour, it's early, it's quiet, it's hard, and it's yours. Not because it's easy to claim, but because it's easy to ignore. And in that ease, most people lose themselves before the day even starts. This hour is not about waking up early for the sake of discipline. It's about returning to yourself before the world gets a chance to pull you away. Before the phone rings, before doubt creeps in, before your mind is hijacked by other people's urgency. This is the hour where your soul can speak without interruption, where your decisions are pure, undistorted by fatigue or opinion. And yet, most never meet this moment. They sleep through it, trading clarity for comfort. But clarity has a cost. And that cost is effort in the dark when no one is watching, and everything in you wants to remain asleep. In this hour, you are faced with the most honest reflection of who you are. There are no excuses, no distractions, just you and the resistance. And that resistance will say you've done enough. You deserve more rest. One day off won't matter. But that voice isn't your friend. It's the last echo of your past identity trying to survive. It knows that if you keep showing up in this hour, it won't last. That's why it fights hardest when you're closest to change. It's not trying to protect you. It's trying to keep control. But the forging hour is where control shifts, where silence becomes power, where the choice to rise, to move, to face the cold reality of your effort becomes a statement. I am no longer the person who delays. I am no longer the servant of comfort. In this moment, I choose discomfort on purpose. Not because I have to, because I refuse to be owned by ease. And each time you act on that choice, your identity begins to shift, not with fireworks, but with quiet certainty. Discipline earned in this hour carries weight. It's different from what happens when you're watched, praised, or pressured. This kind of discipline is self-initiated, self-contained. It is the deepest kind of freedom, doing what's hard with no reward but the transformation itself. That's why the forging hour matters. It's not about productivity, it's about identity. It's about becoming someone who does not flinch at the presence of pain, someone who does not beg for permission to evolve. This hour is where you write the story of your life in invisible ink. No one sees it, no one applauds it. But later, when the pressure hits, when the day turns hard, when others fall, you remain. Because you paid the price early. You bled in silence. You forged yourself when no one else was willing to. And that strength is permanent, because it was built in solitude. Seneca understood this. He wrote not for applause, but for the soul. He didn't wait for a better time. He created it. So must you. The forging hour is not about getting ahead. It's about getting real. It's about building the spine you'll need when life punches back, because it will. And when it does, you won't be surprised. You'll be ready, not by accident, but by decision. If you've been avoiding this moment, delaying the pain, waiting for motivation, understand this. Your future is not built in public. It's built in the quiet repetitions no one sees, in the weights lifted when no one is watching, in the thoughts reframed before the sun comes up. You do not need applause, you need alignment, and alignment begins with discipline in the dark. So rise, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because the forging hour is where the weak are separated from the willing, and the willing become unbreakable. Regret is a mirror. Break it now. Regret doesn't scream, it waits. It waits in silence, in stillness, in the pauses between your distractions. And when it arrives, it doesn't attack, it reflects. That's what makes it unbearable. It doesn't invent pain. It shows you what you chose, or rather, what you refuse to choose. Every opportunity ignored, every discipline delayed, every strength abandoned. Regret places a mirror in front of you and forces you to look, not at what was done to you, but at what you didn't do for yourself. And that mirror is brutal, because it doesn't distort, it doesn't lie. It shows you the cost of comfort. It shows you the life you could have had if you had just stepped into the fire one more time, if you had trained your focus, if you had silenced the excuses, if you had stopped negotiating with weakness. That reflection haunts people. They stare into it when they're older, slower, quieter, and they realize that the pain they tried to avoid didn't disappear. It multiplied. People speak of fear of failure, but the deeper fear is this: looking back and seeing a life spent playing small, and knowing no one else is to blame. Not the system, not the timing, not your past, just the daily decision to stay the same. And if you don't want to see that reflection one day, if you don't want to stand before the mirror and see absence where there should have been strength, you have to shatter it now, before it forms, before regret becomes your shadow. Discipline is the only weapon that breaks that mirror. It's not just structure, it's defiance. Every act of discipline is a refusal to build the kind of life you'll later want to escape. Every repetition, every early morning, every moment of resistance is a crack in that future regret. You're not just building habits, you're breaking destiny. A destiny of silence, of heaviness, of if only. And that's the most powerful form of control you will ever hold. The ability to alter what your future reflection will reveal. But you can't wait. Regret builds slowly, and comfort makes it invisible, until one day, it's all you can see. That's the danger of passivity. It doesn't hurt now. It hides, it waits, and then it arrives at full force when time is no longer on your side, when your choices are fewer, when your energy is lower, and by then, all you can do is watch. But not yet. Not now. Now, you still have fire. And that fire must be directed. If you have failed before, if you have avoided, delayed, retreated, good. That means you know the feeling. That means the mirror has already begun to form. But you are not trapped. You are not finished. And you are not weak for having waited. You are only weak if you continue. The decision to break that mirror is not dramatic. It's quiet, it's daily, it's invisible, and it's yours. You were not born to admire others who chose strength. You were born to choose it yourself, to carve out a life of weight and meaning, not because it's easy, but because you understand the cost of not doing so. The enemy is not pain, the enemy is avoidance. And if you let it rule you, regret will write your story. But if you stand now, in the pain, in the pressure, in the moment, you shatter that mirror before it ever finishes forming. So act, even if it's small, especially if it's small, because what you do today becomes who you are tomorrow. And who you are tomorrow becomes the reflection that meets you at the end. Break the mirror now, or prepare to live inside it later. If this voice reached you, subscribe, and leave in the comments the pain you're choosing now, so regret doesn't choose it for you.